Alright, so guys, hey, you want to learn the easiest way to learn how to do sublimation? I'm going to give it to you. This is the cheapest way, it's the easiest way. First of all, before you even consider doing any of this stuff, and before you even buy the printer to do it with, I have a video on my channel that says learn the fudge factors of your heat press. You have to watch that one. You have to, because heat presses are never right, ever. Alright, so let's get into this. The first thing you need to do, okay, you got your heat press already. Life goes on. Alright, so now we're going to go over, this is my Epson ET4700 printer. ET stands for EcoTank. It has to be an EcoTank printer. EcoTank, these four channels right here are your black, your yellow, your magenta, and your cyan. Okay, you got to have that because you can't use the ink that comes with your printer. You have to have sublimation ink. Now what I use is what's called Hypo sublimation ink. It's probably one of the lower cost ones on the market, but it works awesome. It does really good work. Okay, we'll put that aside. Alright, so once you get your ink, once you get your printer, you're all ready to start going. Couple rules and thumb. Again, I can't stress this enough. You need to know your fudge factor of your heat press before you start doing any of this, because that is super important. Okay, so now you got your printer, now you got your ink. What do? Well, it depends on what you're planning on doing. Alright, let's say you're planning on doing, say, coffee mugs, 11-ounce coffee mugs. An 11-ounce coffee mug uses a print size top to bottom. Now it doesn't matter what the width is. The width can be as big as you want it, as long as it doesn't go beyond the handle. A width size can be anything you want it. Myself, personally, I don't like to go all the way around the mug. I like to have my logo on the back side, so I try to keep the print to the very front of the mug. So when people are drinking their coffee, that's what people see. You see my emblem on the back. Alright, 3.75 inches is that magic number. That's the height of what you want your print to be. That will print from very top to very bottom with full bleed. So that means there's no white space on top, no white space on bottom. It's just, there's your picture. And it works with everything. Trust me, it works really good. Two ways of doing that. Now I have a Cook's 1000 watt convection oven. If I put like a silicone wrapper on the mug and I put it in that oven, it's going to be in that oven for about 12 minutes to give a good print. Sometimes I leave it a little longer, but 12 minutes. Anything less, you get what's called a faded print. It hasn't been in there long enough to allow the ink to gas off into the sublimation coating that's on the mug. Alright, if it's in there too long, any of your bright whites will start to turn yellow. As an average. If it turns yellow, the whole mug's going to end up being yellow, basically. That means you're either too hot, you've been in too long, whatever. It's just a given. Alright, so now you come up with your print. You got your design. Now I'm going to give you an example of a design. This one is definitely not one made for a mug, but it's one that's sitting here on the printer, so I'm going to just show it to you. This is your print. Alright. Now I want you to notice it's backwards. Why is it backwards? Well, because when you wrap it around the mug, the ink side of that paper has to face the sublimation coating that is on the mug. And no, you can't use dollar store mugs or anything like that. You have to buy sublimation mugs. They have a special coating, there's a poly coating on them that you have to use it. The same thing with when you're sublimating t-shirts. Yeah, you can sublimate a cotton shirt. It'll last until you put it in the wash. Each time you put it in the wash, you'll lose about 50% of what your ink looks like. So you got a really nice picture on a cotton t-shirt, you put it in the wash, now you only have 50% of that nice picture on your cotton t-shirt. Wash it one more time, now you got 50% of that again. So now you're down 25% of what you originally printed on that t-shirt that looks like hell now, because now it's really starting to fade away. You wash it the third time, you're down to 12.5%. You do 4, you probably got the t-shirt back to what it was when you bought it originally, or really close, because sublimation ink is made to stick to polyester. Yes, it will stick to some other substrates like rayon and spandex and others, but polyester is the number one. Okay, so now you do that. You got your picture ready, it's all set to go. How do you do it? Well, the first thing I would do is take the picture, place it on the mug. Don't never touch the mug, because anywhere you touch the mug, you have oil in your finger, that oil will stay on that surface of that mug. You put your picture on the mug, you heat tape your picture to the mug where you want it placed. You have to use heat tape. You can't use Scotch tape or any other tape. You have to use heat tape. Alright, so now you got that all done. You're all ready to go, right? No, you're not. You have to have something that holds it tight. Now my personal preference is using silicone locking wraps because you can use them over and over and over again. Again, it depends on what you're planning on doing and how you're planning on doing it. In a convection oven, they work really well, as long as your oven is at the right temperature. For me, the right temperature is always 400 degrees. It doesn't matter what I sublimate, that temperature or that heat press has to be set to 400 degrees. Alright, so now we're at the magic 400. That's the temperature that's needed to heat the ink up to be able to make it gas off so that it can suck into the polyester coating that's on whatever your substrate is that you're putting it on, be it a mug, a tumbler, whatever. It's always 400 degrees. Okay, now this is where it really gets screwy. In my convection oven, which is a 1,000-watt Cook's oven, it's 15 minutes maximum in that oven. 12 is probably the most optimal. That's a long time for it to be in the oven, but that's after that oven has already been on for 4, maybe going on, I don't know, 5 minutes to preheat. That's a long time. Yeah, it's only 1,000 watts per hour. Well, 1,000 watts is a kilowatt. So whatever you pay for your electric bill per kilowatt hour is how much you're spending doing that one mug in your oven. For mine, because of the size of it, it's not a really big one. I wouldn't recommend doing more than 3 at a time because it's convection, it's got air, it flows around. And if you put too many in there, they get packed together and it doesn't allow the air to flow around. And also another thing for mine is that because the door is the least insulated part of that oven, that's always the coldest part of the oven, so I always put them so handles face the door. I don't turn them, I don't do anything fancy like that. I set them in the oven and just let it run. Okay, but I always make sure there's airspace so that that air blowing around inside that oven covers every part of that mug. Now mind you, again, it doesn't do well around the handles because the handles are facing the door is the lowest insulated part of the oven, and that's just the way they go. Alright, for me, alright, you do it for 12 minutes. Don't reach in and grab that mug, especially ceramic. Do not reach in. Actually, anything you do, don't reach in and just grab it because it's going to be hot. But the ceramic mug will hold that heat for almost a half an hour before you can touch it bare by hand. Seriously, it's that hot. You want to grab like a pair of them silicone grippers, or maybe a good heat glove, or in my case I just grab a good winter glove, not the nylon kind, they melt, but like a good quality suede leather. They work really well for it. You just reach in, grab the mug, pull it out, you open the wrap, and you don't have to remove the pitcher right away. This is a farce that has been said many times, and I totally disagree with it, and I prove people wrong with it. You can take that mug out of the oven, remove that wrap. You want that wrap to cool, because chances are you're going to need to use it again, and they're expensive. You set that mug aside. You put it on a trivet, if you have one, or in my case, you put it on just a piece of tile, sitting on the countertop, and you let it cool. You don't set it on your countertop unless you got granite or quartz or something like that for a countertop. If you got like a typical everyday countertop, don't set it on that countertop. It will melt plastic. It's 400 degrees. Once it cools, then you can go in and you can remove all your tape and all your paper and everything and whatnot. Looks nice. Alright, if you're doing tumblers, it's a total different situation. A tumbler, now remember, a coffee mug was 12 minutes in that same convection oven with a print that's 3.75 inches tall. If you're going to do a tumbler, something similar to this, well then your times change. Pretty much everything changes. What will happen is when you do a tumbler is that your pitcher now has to be 8 inches tall because that's the height of the tumbler. I always go 8.1 on the printout side so I know I got full bleed. And then it's 9.25 inches around that tumbler, that's your circumference around the tumbler. I always go 9.35 so I know I've got a little bit of an overlap so I don't have an open seam. I don't have my other one here to show you what an open seam looks like, but it's not pretty. You take your heat tape, you wrap that pitcher around that, and you tape it as tight as you possibly can. You put it into a heat wrap. You go to your Wagner heat gun or whatever heat gun you got, forced air heat. You set it on low, and you just put a glove on because it's going to get hot on your hand. And just slowly start going back and forth and let that heat start shrinking up. And you do it, and you do it, and you do it until it's finally shrunk all the way around, top, bottom, all the way around the sides. It doesn't matter if it has wrinkles in it because the wrinkles won't matter. You're holding the pitcher to the tumbler, and that's the part that counts. Now when you go back to that same oven, mine is a Cook's, you go back to that same oven, you put that in the oven. My time, special time, is exactly, and once I put that, the oven's already preheated, I put the tumbler in the oven, I let it set, it's in there for exactly 3 minutes, not a second longer. I set my phone up as a stopwatch and say, time this. The minute it hits 3 seconds, the door is open, the tumbler's out. Again, wearing a glove, they're very hot. Take it out. Now then, you definitely want to take the heat wrap off because the heat wrap will hold the heat in, and you definitely want to take the paper off the outside of it. Be careful not to move it around, just take it off as easy as you can. You don't need to worry about removing all the tape and stuff. If it's stuck to the tumbler, leave it. Once it's cooled down to where you can handle it by hand, you can peel the tape off. Life goes on. But that heat wrap, or the shrink wrap, will hold the heat inside, which will keep cooking that pitcher onto the tumbler. And the paper actually will too. The paper actually becomes like an insulator because paper is very fibrous. Once you take it out, you get rid of the pitcher, you get rid of the heat shrink and all that stuff. You set it aside. Again, I put it on a piece of tile, put it on a trivet. Don't set it on your countertop. 400 degrees is very hot. Again, wear a glove. Speaking of which, never touch the surface that you're planning on printing on, ever, because you have oils in your skin that will stick to the sublimation surface that you're trying to put a picture on. Your fingerprints will show through. That's very important to remember. It happens with tumblers, it happens with mugs, it happens with a lot of different things. Signs are real bad. All right, I'll go back. Okay, let's say we're going to do a sign. All right, I actually have a sign print here. Let's say we're gonna put this print on a sign. Notice how everything on that piece of paper right there is printed backwards. The reason for that is when you put this on your item that you're going to sublimate on, you're putting it face down. The ink's going to leave this surface and fuse itself to the surface below it, so it'll read right when you pick that surface up. You always want to print and mirror to be able to get to that stage. I can throw that one away. It's not one I want to keep. For me, a sign says basic results. Same thing as if I was doing a t-shirt. 400 degrees, 1 minute. You close the press. I'm not talking bite that thing down tight and all that stuff. It's the heat that works it. It's not the pressure. You can have it so soft that you barely even got to put any pressure on it. It's the heat that transfers the ink. It's not the pressure. And actually, the more pressure you put, the more it imprints on the shirt and leaves what would be like if you're embroidering, be a hoop mark. In this case, it would be a paper burn. The paper will press into the fibers of the shirt. It takes a lot to get them back out. In regards to that part for shirts, what I highly recommend, and I do this all the time, trim off all your white space around the side of your picture. All of it. Take it right down to where it's just the color itself, and then use heat tape to hold it in place. Because what happens when you press that shirt is that whole piece of paper will imprint a little bit into the polyester of the shirt. It won't stay there forever, but it will imprint it. So if you only go to the size of your print, it looks like it belongs there. You got to use heat tape, no scotch tape, none of that packaging tape or duct tape or anything like that. It's got to be heat tape because that's the only tape that it doesn't melt within these temperatures. Once you do it, and again, it's a 1 minute. You're doing a shirt, you're doing a sign, doesn't matter. You can even do in a hat. You put it on a hat press. Don't press it all the way down, just hold it down to where it's close and let it sit there for a minute. Lift it back up. You don't want to crush the front of the hat. It will sublimate as long as it's a sublimatable hat. The whole thing about doing sublimation printing that a lot of people don't understand and really is super important is you can't just pop it into the oven. Say, I'm going to set the oven to 400 degrees and just pop it in. Because you said that oven's 400 degrees, That oven may be saying it's 400 degrees, but if you get yourself a temperature gun and you check it, I'll guarantee you it's not going to be 400 degrees. The heat presses never are. An oven probably never is. I know mine isn't. Mine actually gets up to about 415, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you got to learn how long you got to leave things in based on the temperature you're running. It's not that hard to come up with. But again, all you do, okay, you buy the printer. Do not, I repeat, do not ever use the original ink that came with it.